Welcome to the MetaView podcast. Hear these non-fungible conversations. They will yield you great knowledge and perspective. But beware, they might also make your brain go boom. So watch your step, because this rabbit hole goes deep. Good luck and have fun. Welcome, dear listeners, to the 27th episode of the MetaView podcast. Today we have Brendan Norgaard, who is a researcher, writer, and founder. I found him while researching the metamodern and game B spaces, both of which he plays a role in. Many moons passed, and our paths finally crossed, and twice in 24 hours, actually. First, it turned out he's facilitating this metamodern hackers collective to which Hanzi Freinacht added me. And then next morning, someone added him to this Meta Crisis DAO Telegram group. And you could say we were meant to meet. Yeah, as I often say, metagame is inspired partly by metamodernism and partly by Game B. And this man is in both camps and a founder of the Enlightened Worldview project. So honestly, could you think of a better guest for the MetaView podcast? I kind of doubt it. But if you do, please DM me on Twitter or Telegram at Peth. That's Petheth. Thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the show. Without further ado,
Okay, yes. Well, I'm up to some interesting stuff with this Enlightened Worldview project that I'm working on, So, and what that means is that we want to promote enlightenment, and that's this like new enlightenment where the first enlightenment in the Western world was based on reason and evidence and helping people get away from traditional dogmas. And then also there's like a convergence that can have with the Eastern enlightenment of mindfulness and recognizing the interrelations and interconnections and working toward, inner peace and peace in society. Okay, so working like, okay, we want a new enlightenment. And what we're trying to do is to implement something close to what is given in the Hanzi Freinacht books, the Listening Society, and also the second book, the Nordic ideology, looking at how can we implement something like this to promote areas of public life that will give people a higher quality of life and to strengthen communities, strengthen democracy, give people this inner awareness and mindfulness, help people sort out fact from fiction in the news and current events, and also, this community trust building and strengthening communities, giving people a sense of meaning in life, and also helping people have like sovereignty from forces of oppression. So these are all important areas of life that we want to promote. And the idea is that there could be like institutions to do this. Now, within the Hanzi Freinacht books, they are leaning on like government, like new governmental ministries. And we're thinking, okay, how can we do this given the adjacent possible? And probably the best way would be to leverage civil society. So, and then also to think that we can maybe kind of coordinate this through software development to help people, encourage people to come together, have like leadership structures, people who are adept at these different areas of life, like people who are experts at democracy building. And then you would imagine there's probably not exactly the same people who are experts at everything. So there's a separation of concerns. So some people would be like sense-making experts, right? And some people would be inner awareness, mindfulness, authentic relating experts. So in every city, we would think, okay, so there's going to be regular events happening where people are encouraged to come together and work on these skills. And that there would be like, not only in physical spaces, but woven together with the online communities. But I want to focus on in-person events and having these happen regularly and having them be visible transparent so that people would know where they are and be a part of that and have the leadership to work with the rank and file members to promote these areas, and have it be understandable and engaging and inspiring to people, especially those who don't have a background in all of this, but then they would get something out of it and they would have a higher quality of life through that. There would be value would be added to their lives, including people who are, struggling or have very busy lives. They would still have this, there's a way to do that is entertaining to people, and then they were also getting that, sense-making capabilities through it, and the inner awareness capabilities, and also like the meaning and spirituality through being a part of these communities and these circles so I was thinking, okay, how can we coordinate this through software that would encourage people to come together? It'd be like schools for adults, So it's based on the Bildung model as well, which is the community development, self-cultivation, and lifelong learning, all working in conjunction and hand in hand, So based on that model given in not only so I mentioned the Hanzi Freinacht book, but also, the books by Lena Rachel Anderson and Thomas Bjorkman talking about Bildung. So that's what we're trying to do.
All right, that sounds great. And is this in any way related to the Meta Modern Hackers Collective?
That's correct, yes. So Daniel Gertz and Emil Einer Fries had, there's some people who are interested and connected to their work, and some of whom are technology-based people, or, hackers. And so the idea was to have a collective to work on that. That would be like, okay, so probably that general question of how to implement anything close to these ideas given in those Hanzi Freinacht books through technology. What is that connection? How can you do some sort of software development to improve the societies and communities, to work on those areas of public life, to implement the 6 forms of politics, the inner development dimensions of depth, code, state, and so those are inner development dimensions that are given in the Hanzi Freinacht books, and they come together in what is called the effective value meme. So that there, just this idea that you could actually have software development to coordinate, to promote that. So there's a few of us in this Meta Modern Hackers Collective. So we have people like Jim Rutt and a few others, and we're trying to solicit ideas. We're trying to come up with that. A lot of people do come to these events with good ideas. We're looking at project coordination. We're looking at the landscape of what's out there, and so a lot of these projects. And I've also been involved with the Collaborative Technology Alliance. So that's okay. Looking at, there's a lot of these platforms that are out there. There's a tech stack looking at for decentralization for Web3, and how do these pieces of the puzzle come together? How can people coordinate rather than try to out-platform each other? Last year, Hanzi Freinacht published an article about how, so if you're always trying to out-platform your friends, I have a better platform than you, how can we essentially find the unified semantics so that these different platforms can coordinate with each other and be interoperable with each other, or recognize how they are within the same tech stack. Like maybe one platform is working on one level of the stack and then another one is at a different level, and then they essentially can have vertical integration. So we're looking at a lot of things like that.
Yeah, protocolization and interoperability. Big reasons why I love Web3, and it's pretty much how we're building metagame. So the profiles that we build on top of Ceramic, they can be integrated across different platforms using the same data schema, so that profiles can be completely interoperable across different communities and projects. And it's the same way that quest chains are built. So the quest chains we are using for the onboarding paths or like the courses, and anybody can create their own these quest sequences, but they can also be integrated across different platforms using different UIs, so people can create one inside metagame and have it accessible through there, but at the same time they can also integrate it whatever else they want. So yeah, I love that you're thinking in the same direction.
Yeah. So the difficult thing though is trying to find investment for a lot of these projects. So I think I have a project that is, you know, I think it would provide people with a higher quality of life, and it would use technology. Would probably not centrally like be focused on technology while it's being used, because the idea is to coordinate how to get people together into these circles for adult lifelong learning. And the reason I'm focused on the adult lifelong learning is because I see so many people working on education for childhood or adolescence, and this seems to be an important niche that isn't being met really as much, especially in terms of, okay, how do we bring people together in physical spaces, which is something I saw that was kind of lacking even before the pandemic. And then it was like, okay, everyone's got to stay home. And all right, well, and the pandemic ended and people still are staying home a lot, you know, and there isn't a lot of direct interaction. People were on our screens too much. So maybe that would be a part of these community circles. Like maybe people would be interacting with each other and using a phone while they're doing that to coordinate on what they're learning or what they're doing. But for the most part, it's direct, hand-to-hand, eye-to-eye, face-to-face communication and connection that would be oriented toward things like sense-making and civic engagement and inner awareness. You know, that would promote those skills in a way that is entertaining and engaging to people, and something that they would be, you know, feel that they are getting this value add through that. So I would think, okay, if you're providing people with higher value somehow, then it's something that they would be willing to pay for, like through a subscription fee or something like that, or event fees. And then that would provide revenue for this platform that I'm looking at. So I'm also looking at it as like an add-on that can be deployed to different platforms. There's platforms that are out there, some of which are under development, some of which are new. We have, for example, the Wico platform. You might have heard of that. That's the where the Hanzi Freinacht MetaModern forum is now actually on Wico.io. And there's others like the Hilo platform, which is associated with the Holochain, and it is which I believe Wico is also associated with Holochain. So somewhere in the tech stack, or at least there's ideas to move these platforms into Holochain eventually. Right now, they're still, I think, deployed as Web 2 apps. But Hilo is, I believe, oriented toward projects that are for like regenerative agriculture, you know, more localized bioregional projects and stuff, and that's how they get the revenue. So I would think what I'm looking at for this Enlightened Worldview app, it would essentially, you know, be oriented toward bringing people together for these sort of community circles, but it would be something that would be deployable to multiple platforms out there. So it wouldn't be an entirely new platform, but the idea is, okay, so how do we get revenue for this or investment? And I haven't figured that out yet.
Right, the hard part. And so you want to turn the Enlightened Worldview project into a platform. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So again, it wouldn't be a standalone platform. What I'm looking at actually is something like the Meetup app, which they have in a lot of countries. I guess you're in Croatia, they probably have the Meetup app there. And but it would be, so many of these platforms are disconnected from each other. You know, you have user accounts and like ways of communicating with each other and ways of doing things. But the idea is that there would be a Meetup-like app that would then be deployable to one of these platforms or any one of them just at the same time, like an add-on, you know. And that's what I'm kind of looking at for Enlightened Worldview. And again, it would be essentially looking at how to implement something close to the Hanzi Freinacht Nordic ideology Montesquieu 2.0 model, but through civil society, by looking at organizations that are out there doing one or more of these functions and tagging them and looking at making partnerships with them, categorizing them based on which of these 6 forms of politics they have and what the curriculum would be and what's where people are meeting, and trying to essentially implement some of these frameworks. You know, there's frameworks for social theory that can be deployed, so that can actually drive the inner workings of the system where it could actually do something, but even though the people who use it, they don't need to know that. You don't have to memorize all these social theories. It would just implement that, and it would provide for you this way of promoting certain aspects of your private and public life that give you a higher quality of life and improve your communities and your relations to your community, and strengthen that with your family, your friends, and hopefully your nation and your world. Give us better political and economic systems as well. If enough people do it, the idea is like with the this model is that it's kind of based on game B, where like if you provide people and communities with a higher quality of life or in certain ways, then it would want to replicate itself. It's a model that would kind of similar to how the original Montesquieu model of the three branches of government it replicated itself because it works so well. And so this is ideas that with 6 new forms of politics, 6 new branches, which, the 6 actually would be more based on civil society, but they would be there. Every community would have that. And with the separation of concerns, that shows that like you don't have any one organization that is thinking it's going to be all things to all people. So you have that in every community. You have hopefully these 6 that are providing this is one that's providing people with meaning and spirituality. And there's another one here that's providing sense-making capabilities. And like essentially each of these 6 are in place in these major cities to where people are getting higher quality of life. And then, we want to do that here as well in this city. And then there, so that essentially gets to the point where people have a greater ability to not only make sense of the news, but also to have meaning in life, etc., and more civic engagement, to where people would want to have a better functioning political system and economic system, and that would provide game change.
With this grassroots way, with connecting the existing organizations, and not organizations, but more so like communities who are already practicing this stuff, then trying to build these ministries. But let's back up a bit. So we had Hanzi on the show, we had Jim Rat on the show, but there's still probably listeners who have no idea what we're talking about. Like, what the fuck is Game B? What is metamodernism? So we want to give a quick rundown of 30 seconds of what is Game B, what is metamodernism, and how they compare.
Yes, I will tell you what Game B is. Okay, so it's like life is a game. There's a game of life. We're all trying to succeed. We're all trying to thrive in this game of life. We don't have to compete with each other, but competition is a part of it, okay? But it's not like, okay, where the strong are going to beat down everybody who isn't that strong. And so because when we have so much competition in life where people are just competing with each other constantly, then we're all going to lose at the game of life. So we want to structure the rules of the political and economic system so that there is healthy competition, but we all have a better chance of succeeding and thriving at the game of life, because life isn't all a dog-eat-dog world, because then we all lose. So we all want to win at the game of life, and I think we can. We can restructure the rules so that more people have the ability to provide for themselves an adequate life and to protect their family and friends and to have live an adequate and happy life.
Well said. Yeah, there's this idea of omni-win society. And so that's kind of also related to metamodernism and they how they write about the game change.
Yeah, and I can define metamodernism as well. Okay, so we have people with different ideas or different worldviews, and some people are thinking in terms of rationality and progress and evidence and science, and we can call that modern. Because so centuries ago, people were much more traditional, much more pre-modern, believing in, holy books and traditional religion. And a lot of people still do. Okay, so those are important areas of life, even in our modern world. We have, people who are traditional, religious, and we have people who are modern, secular, rational science. And we also have people who are progressive and pluralistic. And, that's the postmodern. They want to respect people's rights. And they don't like how much there is this, again, it's like there's so much competition that ends up trampling over people's rights. And people's inner feelings need to be respected. Okay, so we have that pre-modern, modern, and post modern. And what if we could try to structure our society so that we bring in the best of all three of these? If in order to do that, we actually have to go like meta on the concept of modernism, you know? So we're going to take like an abstract kind of high level view and balance across these. So that's meta modernism, or at least that's one way of defining it.
Well said. And how would you compare the two?
How would I compare what to?
Game B and metamodernism.
Okay, yeah, well, so I don't think that there necessarily would be a conflict between the two, but you can see how I offered two different definitions just now for those two, and that's so they address different sides of things. You could probably say that a certain game B structure could actually still be within the modern worldview. It still could be, but I probably a more stable and just game B would be one that's based on meta-modern principles.
Right. Yeah, I guess you could say that proper game B is meta-modern, and also being meta-modern is playing game B. So there's difference, but they're kind of leading to the same way. And how did you get involved in all of that?
How did I get involved? So I guess for one thing, here in Northern California, I grew up here and I saw how there is so much technology development and it gets better every year. There's this driving force to make, machines and software that is so much more intelligent and advanced year after year. And the government, though, doesn't seem to be getting better. So there's that disconnect. This is the government that a lot of people rely on for justice, for helping provide opportunities in life. And that is lacking and dysfunctional, with where's public money going and how are we getting involved politically? Okay, so a lot of people are really not. They're disconnected from it. They think that it doesn't work, or it seems to only really favor the wealthy and powerful. And a lot of times we have situations where it appears that the wealthy and powerful can use their power and wealth to, just can continue to maximize their own power and wealth over and over again and inadvertently destroy the lives of people who are at the lower ends of society, So why does that happen? Why aren't we improving things? Okay, so I saw that disconnect. I also I was interested to learn more about a lot of these things, and I came I get to know some people who are connected to Game B, and also people who are connected with Integral, which is another thing that I've been involved with. There's a pretty big Integral community in the Bay Area. I am not actually in the Bay Area, just kind of outside of it in Sacramento, but I got to know a lot of those people, and I've been involved in those communities as well.
Cool. And get into the dirty side of the Bay Area and the downtown San Francisco. Do you have any thoughts on that? On how do you think that sort of stuff could be addressed by Game B or metamodernism, or is it something to leave up to the government, something to leave up to the grassroots, or how do we solve that?
The sad thing is that there's pathologies inherent to hypermodernity where especially in the Silicon Valley, you have this people with so much wealth, and they want to keep doing more and more investments into more technology, and then there ends up being like a winner-take-all economy. You have mega billionaires who are wanting to do more and more technology development. A lot of times it's led by people who are sociopaths, They pretty much they don't really have the ability to have the empathy for people who are struggling to get by. They just want to keep using their power to do whatever they want, and drive the technology forward. And then a lot of times the people who are working for them, they'll just do whatever is they're hired to do. And then so that you have that within. That's a lot of times that kind of runs the show within the Bay Area. But then also you have the city councils and the people who are elected officials who are in the postmodern mindset, and they want to in a very misguided way. They're very, I guess you could say, woke, and they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. They don't want to do anything that they think is going to hurt or harm the lives of people who are already, struggling. Like, there's people with addiction problems. There's people who weren't able to make it in this dog-eat-dog world, and then they end up being homeless. So what we probably want to do is protect people's private property. We want to protect the downtown. We want to make things vibrant for commerce, but we also don't want to harm the lives of the homeless. But they basically say, okay, so we're going to just let the homeless stay there. And, we don't want to hurt them. We don't want to move them out. So they just defecate out in the middle of the streets. And a lot of people, a lot of them break into stores and stuff. It's very dangerous downtown. And I think that the shutdown, the lockdown in a lot of places, it was very misguided because you essentially made it so that the essential cultural framework that it was holding together, the sociocultural, making it so that there is stability, that was really in shambles after that. Okay, so then the lives of a lot of people even more desperate, and there's even more mental health issues and more homelessness, and now they don't know what to do with it. There's just a lot of homeless out there, and basically what they would need to do is to probably have a whole lot more public investment, but not do so in a way that is so progressive minded, because that's the people who are in charge, who are elected officials in those places, including San Francisco. They don't understand how to bring in some healthy competition or work on something kind of like a game B principles in order to have public money spending and programs that would improve the mental health of these people who are homeless. I mean, there's ways of doing it, but they don't know how to do it. So you have essentially a class-based society, very stratified. You have very wealthy people in places like San Francisco, and you have mentally ill and desperate homeless people, and they just live right alongside each other, and there is nothing changing anything because the elected officials are very progressive, but in a way that is very pathological. And the ones who have so much of the money are the essentially sociopath business corporate owners, and they just want to keep pumping more and more money into technology development, including that doesn't provide improvement of our lives. It just further addicts us to their content, so it's a big mess.
Right. Yeah, I was there for the first time this summer, and I was mind blown to see it. I've heard stories about it, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. It's like a post-apocalypse in the city center, and I didn't look at where I was booking the Airbnb, and I happened to book it at the wrong place. And so out my window, I had the Twitter headquarters on the left side, and like the corner of like the worst possible street on the right side. Like just this seeing this balance of like the extreme wealth and extreme poverty, and just living together, and talking to people who live there and asking like, so like what do you make of this, like how can this be solved? And they're like, oh yeah, I don't judge them, they like that's their way of life. And I'm like, okay, so that's what you describe now. They want to hurt their feelings, but it's like, yeah, it's a problem. And then I was researching when I got home, and I was thinking like, why don't they solve this problem? And then obviously they're trying to solve it, like they're throwing millions at this problem, but I guess they're just not solving it in the right way.
Yeah.
So what gives you hope? How do you see all this stuff playing out? Not just in terms of homelessness in San Francisco, but in general.
Well, what gives me hope is looking at local game change, local development of community circles, a deeper integration across aspects of public life and social experiments in that regard, and using technology to benefit people's lives. So now there are challenges. I'm actually kind of freaked out by a lot of where the directions that technology is going, because it's like, okay, I don't even know how to keep up with the AI developments. It's kind of scaring me, But there are ways in which we might be able to harness some of this to try to, okay, so what is the end game in terms of the local social experiments. What are we trying to do, and how can we use technology to coordinate that, to encourage that? Some of that would maybe involve some AI that would essentially, you'd use these apps to essentially coordinate, encouraging people to come together to where they're looking at each other eye to eye, and then they don't need to use the app for a little while because they're in that space. That's what gives me some hope. I think you could use apps and platforms to essentially encourage these sort of spaces where then the apps get, aren't being used for a little while. And then the real magic happens of human connections and developing these aspects of our lives. Because otherwise, we're further and further addicted to the apps, the screens. It might even get to the point where there's digital deep fakes that are constructed on the fly to show a human face, and all these like vocal mannerisms and facial features that or expressions that are just constructed on the fly, and the semantics of all of that, because there's semantics for the vocal mannerisms and tone of voice and like facial expressions like eyebrows. There are actually semantics for how the emotional impact of that. So someone could essentially deconstruct that and create an app that would just do that on the fly and interact with you and try to, even be the gender that you're attracted to, and then like that's coming, So the answer is just get off our freaking screens, although we need our screens to help us do that. I think that's what I'm trying to say, right? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, the future is definitely bright and scary at the same time. So where would you send people who are interested in this sort of stuff?
All right, yes. Well, my website is enlightenedworldview.com. And I'm also looking to collaborate with people. There's some of these ideas that I have that are essentially like it is an implementation of some sort of meta theory, comparing and contrasting some of these meta theories in order to help myself understand what I was reading, because I think a lot of these can be put into practice somehow. And then I've actually been involved with a organization that started up recently, which is the Archdisciplinary Research Center, and that's arc.voyage. That's an actual website, by the way, arc.voyage. So I've been somewhat involved with some of that. They just started their website a few days ago, and I think, okay, so there's like a capability stack for improving people's lives or reforming our political and economic systems, that the highest level of the stack is essentially the base would be, these meta theories or these social theories, or how to do that. Like there's like essentially the philosophy and theoretical side of that, and then there's from that certain things are going to be built on top of that. So we're looking at the theory side of things, and then we're looking at how do we implement that. And I think that's what this new Archdisciplinary Research Center, one of their missions is to say, how can we improve society through these meta theories? Now that is actually the most abstract that you could possibly get, what they're trying to do, because they are comparing unification meta theories to each other to see if there's some sort of a universal threads that are common to all of those theories, But that actually might be the best way to go in terms of, so we want to look at how does thought work, how does communication work at the very core, and that if we can hack that, then we can actually start to look at how do we interact with each other, how do we live in peace with each other, and how do we thrive, how do we have our higher quality of life. So a lot of this comes from theory, and the most abstract theory would actually have the potential to do that, because you're looking at different theories like critical realism of Roy Bhaskar compared to Ken Wilber's integral theory, compared to Greg Henrique's unified theory of knowledge. And somewhere in there's a way to improve our psychology and our sociology and our economics and political systems. So quite a bit too, but there's a lot of work that's already underway.
I love it. Yeah, I was talking to Daniel last week, and he told me about it. So we started talking about how we could get some collaboration going between Arc and Metagame, and yeah, maybe we could put some of those theories to work inside Metagame. That would be awesome. And then the closing question: if you had one advice to give to Metagame, what would it be?
Okay, yeah. So, what is the theory on which your ideas are based, and what is that capability stack to do that? Part of which is the technology stack, but then there's also the idea space and how to talk about it, how to talk to people across the sophistication spectrum. So you have different levels of, okay, who am I talking to? What is their context? And how do I explain certain aspects of what I'm doing so that it would be understandable and engaging to them? And then there is a partnership that you can offer, with that. Essentially, that's my what I'm talking about, the capability stack, including the technology stack, including that communication spectrum.
And do you have any resources on that sort of stuff?
Well, I guess that's one of the things that I'm trying to do with my Enlightened Worldview project. I thought maybe we could have I got my hands full already with Enlightened Worldview, but a good friend of mine, his name is Lee Chazen. He has a organization called Glider Self, and he might actually be able to consult on that as well. But I'm definitely looking for collaborators. Lee's looking for collaborators for his work, and if anybody has ideas there, I can also mention some of my other team members. There's been working with Marty Behrens recently, who is he and I started a inner development group recently, and that's part of this pilot program where the idea is that if we start to actually do something at a local level that's based on this Montesquieu 2.0 model of the Hanzi Freinacht books, then maybe we would show this and prove that it's actually working. So for 10 years we've had essentially a sense-making group that's the Sacramento Politics and Philosophy group, but we also recently started this Sacramento Inner Development group that is based on that, and the idea is that we're actually going to try to plant seeds in more cities as well based on this model. And then I've also been working with Danielle Johnson, who is doing a field survey of this whole liminal web in conjunction with the forthcoming Emerge gathering in Toronto. And so those are essentially the people who I work with.
Okay, that's a lot of names, and sounds that a lot of them would also be great guests for this podcast. All right, I will follow up about those names, and thank you very much for coming on. This was great.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.